So I'm going to do a little color mixing today. This is what I do sometimes at the start of a project. Looking at mixing greens. So I've got my travel palette here. These are my usual colors. I'm going to be using my two yellows, my lemon yellow. It's a light valued cooler yellow. By cooler, I mean it's closer to the green side of yellow than the red side of the yellow. Then I've got my new gamboge, which is my warmer yellow. It's a little bit darker. It's closer to the reds than the greens. My blues, I've chosen four. My two usual are French ultramarine and phthalo blue or Windsor blue. French ultramarine is closer on the red side, and phthalo or Windsor blue is more to the green side, so you can get some really good turquoises with phthalo. That's very helpful. Then I've got my indigo right here, over here. That's a much darker, very muted blue. And also my cerulean blue, which is a very light valued, granulating blue, really good for flesh tones, actually, good for landscape painting. I'm just going to add that in because of the lighter value and just to give a little variety. So I'm going to mix my two yellows with each of these blues, and then I'm going to show you some neutralizing colors, which are alizarin crimson, let's see, my deoxanine violet, if I'm saying that right, and my burnt sienna. So if you'll notice, my alizarin crimson, my violet, and my burnt sienna, they're all on the warmer side. They're reds, purples, and yellows, which are the opposite of green. So I'm mixing greens with these and knocking them back or muting them with reddish values or reddish colors. So that's kind of the idea. I'm not going to get too formal with my layout here. We're just going to mix some greens and look at the different properties. Let me put my two pigments out here. I mix these up. We'll see how concentrated they are, but I've got my two yellows. I might add a little bit to that. And I've got my two mixing bowls, so the first one gets off the majority of the pigment, the second one kind of really cleans the brush. I'm just using a kind of an older brush I've had for a while, Robert Simmons. I don't want to use my good brush for this. I don't need a point to paint color swatches, so this definitely does the trick. So now let's put on my quinacridone, get a little more in there. I don't want too much. Yep, that's good. Got my blues. Let's start with my ultramarine. Let's add a little more pigment to that one. And this is a single layer application, but it's going to really give me a good sense of the mix of each of these. Here's my warm or greener toned blue, my phthalo or Windsor blue. And what I want to make sure of is that my brush gets good and cleaned between each different pigment that I use. And my cerulean, that looks like it needs more paint in there. It's a little too diluted. That's a little more pigment. All right. And my indigo, which, wow, talk about a difference. Nice and dark. Yeah, that's a great shadow color. Good for dark backgrounds. Okay, so I'll mix my lemon yellow first with each of these four. Let's see, after using that indigo, I've got to really make sure that's good and clean. So let's do 1, 2, 3. I'm just going to get some piles here. I don't want to confuse myself with too many. And again, cleaning my brush as I dip into each different color. I don't want to contaminate them. And I don't need about 5 different brushes either. Watercolor is simple enough that I can just rinse them off between. Let me use a little more out of here. I just did contaminate my palette a little, but I'm not too concerned about that. That's common. little more blue. Let's go back here for more blue. Okay, I'm looking for a mix between the two. I don't want it to be too blue or too yellow. I want a green. So this right now to me looks a little too blue. So let's go into the yellow, add a little more yellow to that. That's better. So let's start with that. It's a little on the light side. So let's just get a little more concentrated. You really have to stop and think before you start mixing each color to make sure you got the right one when you're doing color swatches, because you don't want to add the wrong one in there. All right, little more pigment. There we go. But that French ultramarine and lemon yellow, my cooler yellow. So now let's go to phthalo. Same yellow. Let's add a little more since we were on the light side last time. Let's get some good pigment in each of these. So phthalo with my yellow. Phthalo is a very strong color. Right away that looks maybe a touch on the blue side, but it's coming out as a good green. Again, a cooler type of green. Notice the difference already with those two. Much cooler in appearance. By cooler I mean more into the blue than the other, which looks a little more muted and a little warmer. So let's go to our cerulean. This is going to make a very vibrant green. Wow. Let's go a little darker on the blue. See how that just shifted it blue? So you could have a whole gradient from yellow to blue on each of these. Let's add a little more yellow to that. Let's see what it does. Look at that. And a little more blue. Yeah. Again, lighter valued because it's a lighter value blue. Okay, so now our indigo. Let's add a little more yellow to this and clean the brush and go into indigo. Look at how much, wow, how dark that is. It is appearing green. The yellow has affected it, but it's still quite, I'm not sure yet. Let's see. Let's add some yellow to that. There we go. I think that's good. Definitely reading as a green. That's what I'm looking for. So the yellow is increased the value on that significantly and very close to these two. Now let's go to the new gamboge. Let's get some puddles out here. Those aren't real big, but that'll do for now. Let's add some in. Let's go to the French ultramarine. Get a little more. There, that's a nice dark. I tend to think my warmer yellows give me more natural greens. See, phthalo. That's such a strong color. I don't want it too strong. There we go. Again, looking for a green. This one, we'll see if this appears more vibrant. See how that looks more saturated or green compared to this? Same value, similar value, but more green. This is a little more muted, more that olivey feel to it. It's subtle, but it's there. That's what I'm looking for with these changes. And especially from the other yellow. What a difference. Okay, moving on. Let's do cerulean. Let's add a little more to that one. Try not to get into that yellow that was there. And here we go. That is a green, a good balance between my blue and my yellow. It's going to be a lighter valued green because it's a lighter value blue. Beautiful though. Nice spring green. And the indigo. Let's see what this looks like. Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't add a lot of indigo. A little darker than my other two dark valued blues. That's beautiful too. Really nice, beautiful natural greens with this bottom line with my warmer yellow. Now, if I wanted to neutralize these, let's show you a few. You don't need much. This is my alizarin. And my purple. And my burnt sienna. Again, reds, oranges on that side of the color wheel. Because I'm muting greens, the complement or the opposite of greens is red. Starch. You've got an orange hue, a purple hue, and a red hue, but they're all on this side of the color wheel, opposite of the green, or bluish green or yellow green. So, if I want to mute this, let's try just the red. I'm not looking for brown, but that's definitely muted. And all that was just a little bitty hit of red in there. Let's try on the other side using the same color. Actually, that wouldn't work. Let's remix. Let's do another one. I don't want to mix my purple or my sienna into that puddle because that's got red in there. So I want to make sure these stay as pure as possible. A little more yellow. Okay. Let's try the burnt sienna into that same mix. So that turned it brown. So I put too much sienna in there. That's what happens. So what I would do in this case, if I was mixing my colors and I realized, okay, I took it out of the green hue family and it ended up in the orange hue family. What I could do is, if I wanted it dark in value, I would just add more blue. That's going to shift it back into the green. Very muted green. If I want to, if value isn't so much a concern and I want to add yellow also, this is going to shift it definitely back into green. So kept it quite light. Let's add a little more this pure color. And let's try that sienna one more time. There we go. I'll put that down there. So see how it's very close to what happened when I added the alizarin crimson. So let's add the purple to the next one. We'll add it into here. And I'll keep it on the diluted side. If it doesn't do too much, I'll add just a little bit more. The purple can be quite strong. So here's just a little bit of purple added to that. Might be barely discernible. That's too much there. Here's quite a bit. It shifted it into the purple hue and out of green. So that was Phthalo or Windsor. Let's go back, add more blue, add more yellow. And a touch of purple. Little muted, not too bad. So lastly, let me show you with these ones down here. They're a little more concentrated. So back to my alizarin. Just need a little bit. Yep, perfect. Even more of an olivey color. Let's do the same with the cerulean one. Let's see what that looks like with a little more umber added to it. Oh yeah, that to me says fall right there. That's some of those fall colors. Went from spring to fall. So you can set these up any way. You could make big elaborate grids for color swatches. I could have made this more extended. I could have one of each with the red, the purple, and the sienna underneath. There's a whole variety, but this really tells me a lot about my colors. And also, if I wanted to go even more diluted, for instance, on the final one here, I could just add more water to my mix and it would show me what a lighter version of that would look like. Same exact mixture, just more water. And again, with a little, let's add the red into that. Red is, to me, ultimately the best color to mute with, or sienna. Let's see, let's add a little red into that. See the subtle, I mean, so subtle of a shift. And again, still very light in value because I've diluted it down. You can almost experiment and see how much red would you have to add to shift it to brown into the orange family. And again, with all of these mixes, it's just the world is the oyster. There's so much variety you can get with greens. And this is just 4 blues and 2 yellows. I could add an earth toned yellow. I've got a raw sienna here, which is very close actually in value to my quinacridone, but it's a little more muted. So that, I'm curious to see what indigo would look like with that. That's beautiful. Another green. So enjoy your greens. Practice, experiment, try color swatches, have fun with it. And I think that will really amp up your landscape and floral images.